All right, welcome to the second episode of the Ten Brothers podcast. Today we're going to be talking to um, brother number four, my younger brother Daniel. He's pretty awesome. Um, Before we get started, just a reminder: the purpose of the podcast is for us to exchange ideas, and the purpose of this episode is so for us to get a little bit more context in who Daniel is and the things that are important to him, so that when we have discussions in the future and we have the episodes where we have discussions about different topics, we can better understand where Daniel's coming from. We can have more empathy and understanding of his positions, and we can just have a more productive conversation overall. So to get started, Dan, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, there's not a whole lot to tell it, that you guys didn't cover in the first one. Obviously, come from a large family. And as you stated, I am the fourth brother, so I'm the one right behind you, with Ellen and Emily in between us. Grew up, as a happy kid and served my mission in West Africa. I work for my father as a service technician. I have two wonderful kids, Rachel. I don't think we were recording before that when she was right here. She's currently getting some water right next to me. I'm sure she'll pop back in a second. And my little buddy who's in the other room. I've been married for 3 years, going on 4, to my wonderful wife. Lucky to have her. And yeah, just trying my best to be a good father, a good husband, a man of God, a good brother, and all around doing what I need to do to improve myself in all aspects of life.
All right. Well, thanks for that introduction. Can you go ahead and share like what have you been up to? Can you give me what does the last 10 20 years of your life look like? Just a general summary.
Well, the last 20 years, I would put me at 8 years old.
I mean, just to kind of give us how have you gotten to where you are? Kind of give us a quick a summarized lead up of your life until this point. You mentioned some of it. You mentioned you're married. You mentioned you have kids, but I know, for example, you went on a mission. I don't know if you mentioned that. So things like that, like education, like just all of that stuff.
Just like most people in the United States, I went to high school, graduated high school, not top of my class, but not bottom of my class, average with everyone else. Uh, I served in Sierra Leone in 2013 through 2014 on my mission, and then I was transferred to the Ghana Cape Coast mission because of Ebola. I finished on my mission until 2015. In the church we have a program for the Aaronic priesthood, which is 1 second. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Being a father, right? Where was I? In the church we
You
have
talked
this.
about your mission.
Okay, yeah, I served a mission in Sierra Leone for the first year, 2013 through 14, and then because of Ebola, I ended up going to Ghana and served 2014 to 2015, and that was a lot of fun. Came home, met my would-be wife actually while she was serving her mission. However, we didn't get along at all. When we first met, she didn't like me. She thought I was a robot because I was just very professional and business oriented and didn't really care for personal information. Like she's told me that she'll ask us. She would ask me how my day was going, and I would just not answer it, and just ask her how her work was going, and how he's thinking. wouldn't even like acknowledge the question at all because she was there to do a job, and I wasn't gonna get in the way of that.
Yeah, in my experience, you've always been somewhat of a straight arrow. There's
And so,
a right way to do things, and that's what you do.
yeah, so she didn't like me at all, but the Lord had other plans, and we ended up getting married in 2019. We had our first daughter. We had our first little one, our daughter, in 2020, and then our son followed suit 2 years later in 2022. Eagle Scout. I got my Eagle Scout award when I was 17. I almost missed it because I was working on another award for the church called the Duty to God. You're supposed to be in bed. Okay. Yep. Moved to Missouri because I wanted to try and establish myself as my own person and not someone that that only has what they have because of his family, but kind of tried to play my own way. Learned what I need to there, and came back to help grow the family business and help the family. Thank you. Uncle Doug and I are talking, working on kids.
I mean, I know how that feels.
I think most people who would be listening to this podcast will understand how that goes.
I mean, we come from a family of 15. I think kids are just going to be part of. I'm sure there's going to be kids in a lot of our videos, intentionally or not.
Something on you.
Oh, Uncle Doug and I are talking.
I'm talking.
You need to fold your arms?
Mm-mm.
Thank you. So yeah, but that is pretty much me and a quick overview of the last couple of years of my life.
Yeah, it sounds like you've had a pretty interesting life. One of these episodes we'll have to get you to talk a little bit more about your mission. I think that'd be interesting to share with people. But for now, go ahead and can you share some of your interests, some of your hobbies, some of your pet peeves, those kind of things?
Interest in hobbies. I am super interested in learning, gaining experiences, trying to improve myself in any way. I enjoy, like currently right now, I raise chickens with my parents. That's been a lot of fun. I do plants, a couple plants around me. I've been trying to revamp my hydroponic system, as you know. I just haven't gotten to doing that. I have been. Stop.
No.
I've been trying to teach myself Chinese. I've been trying to basically have a ton of different things that I've been trying to tackle. Stop. You need to go to bed? Okay. You can go down or you can go to bed. Sit down here. Sit down here or go to bed, please.
Well, that Chinese, that's pretty interesting. I didn't know you were doing that.
Yep.
How's that going?
I'm not very far into it. Like I know a couple. I know how to say hello, and I know what rice is fine, and I'm not very good at it.
Well, we all have to start somewhere.
Chinese is not easy. But yeah,
no, it's not.
I like. We're not counting right now. I like solving problems to make things more efficient.
I'm hungry.
Okay, we'll get you something in a minute. You're right. Uh, I'll be home soon. You guys are you're okay.
Make something for me, Dad.
I need you to be quiet, or I need you to go to bed. Which one? So yeah, no, Chinese is it's just one of those things. Like I want to be able to connect with other people throughout the world. It's one thing I learned on my mission actually that I really enjoyed. I learned I learned a couple languages on my mission. So it was an English speaking mission, but upon arriving in West Africa, I learned that I could connect so much better with the people there if I was willing to swallow my pride and learn their language instead of expecting them to know mine. And so I learned how to interact with them in their language. I don't speak it very well anymore. My wife says that I can if I'm interacting with someone from that region. We were at Walmart a couple of years ago, and we actually ran into someone who was from Ghana, and according to her, I went right back into that language without thinking twice about it. I don't have any memory of it. But it was that experience where I learned that language, people people are proud of who they are and where they come from. And if you can learn how to connect with them personally with who they are and where they come from, and instead of expecting them to connect with you, you can build those relationships a lot quicker and a lot easier when you're the one who's willing to make the first step of showing them that you appreciate and you want to do everything you can for them.
Well, on top
And
of
so,
that, it's you get to know them. You kind of get to step in their shoes. It's kind of like that's what the whole point of this podcast is to encourage people to do that, and then for us to practice doing that with each other. Getting to know each other and better understanding each other.
so that's why I've chosen to learn to teach myself yet another language. Hopefully, I won't forget to speak it. However many years it's been. Oh man, I left my mission 10 years ago this year. Well, hopefully, I won't
Yep.
forget it like I did in my other languages, but I could connect with people that speak those languages.
Time flies. All right. Thanks for sharing that, Dan. All right. So you are, like you mentioned, the fourth son, I think the seventh kid overall. What was it like for you growing up as the seventh kid in a family of 15? And how has that affected you?
I mean, I was the middle kid. I was just kind of left alone. Mom and dad had everything pretty much figured out by the time I came around, so I couldn't really get away with anything. But at the same time, my temperament and my personality wasn't ever to really to push buttons or to see what I could get away with. I was pretty good kid all around.
We lost you there for a little bit. Can you repeat that?
So I like to think that I was a pretty obedient kid growing up. I enjoyed participating in extracurricular activities, and so I was always running off and doing something, whether it was marching band, student council, scouts, whatever, what have you. And so I kept busy through my younger years where I could have been causing problems, but I kept so busy not doing those things that I don't think that was ever an issue for me. But
So
for the
how
most
has
part,
Oh, go ahead.
but for the most part, I kind of feel like not that I was like forgotten or not like or no one noticed me. I just did my thing, and I was just there doing what I needed to do.
go get something to eat, Daddy.
So how do you like the experience has affected you? Like how has that shaped who you are today?
I feel like that pushes me in several different aspects. I tend to be very independent, or strive to be very independent. And go get your stool. If you can.
Find it.
Go look in your bathroom.
Daddy, find it.
Rachel, go look in your bathroom, or you can wait for me.
Can you tell Daddy?
Okay, then sit down and wait. Like,
No, you
sit down and wait.
don't wait.
I grew up to be very independent, self-sufficient. It's actually probably one that drives why I strive to be self-sufficient. You know, in raising animals and learning how to do different things on my own. Sit down. Like right now, I actually have beef fat rendering, so I can make my own. Sausages and other items.
Why is your being loud?
Rachel,
You're
Rachel.
gonna wake up Danny the man.
Rachel, you need to go to bed.
Wake up
Hey,
Danny the man.
you need rations. Go lay down on my bed or go to your bed.
I'm hungry.
Go lay down on my bed or go to your bed. Don't touch that.
What's that?
That's an outlet.
Why?
Okay, listen.
What does it do?
You go lay down on my bed or your bed, and I'll bring you a bottle in a minute. I'll be right back. I'm back. Sorry about that.
Welcome back.
It's gonna be an interesting podcast. Anyways, what were we talking about?
No worries. So you're just talking about how basically, just to summarize what you were saying, is the biggest way that coming from such a large family and being the seventh child has impacted you, is you were saying it's just made you a very independent person.
Mhm.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say that.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what you like, your personal beliefs and your values. I already know the answer to this, but for everyone else, would you describe yourself as a spiritual or religious person?
Yes, I would describe myself as a very religious person.
So, can you briefly describe your religious views or your spiritual beliefs?
I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and the Savior of the world. That is the bedrock of my belief. That through Him and the atonement that He provided for us, we can be saved. I believe that while we are saved through faith alone, I believe that when you truly accept Jesus Christ as your Savior and you truly believe that He did do these things for you, then you will be pricked in your heart to serve Him by keeping the commandments that He has set before us, and you will strive to share that with all the world. I believe that while we are saved through grace, we are still expected, not so much that if we don't do these things, we won't be saved. So I believe we are saved by grace. However, I believe that we are expected to improve ourselves here on earth. I believe we're expected to develop our attributes and our skills and increase in our knowledge. It's the whole purpose of being on this planet is to develop ourselves in physically, mentally, spiritually. I believe that while we are to turn to God for all things, and that He will provide a way for us, I believe that we are to get out of our handcarts and push when trials come our way. I believe that trials are a necessary part of life that help us develop and to grow, and that when they come our way, as difficult as they might be, they are a necessary part of life.
Well, thank
I
you for
also
sharing
believe
those
families are
beliefs.
together forever.
You also believe what?
That families are together forever.
Excellent. So why can you explain why you believe what you believe, or at least briefly explain that?
Well, the bedrock, like as I said, Jesus Christ is the Savior of the world. I believe that here on this world, we were sent here to choose for ourselves between right and wrong. And because we are imperfect, we are incapable of making the right decision every time, simply because we just don't have all wisdom and all understanding yet. We make mistakes, and because we make mistakes, then we fall short of the kingdom of God, which is why I believe the necessity of a savior, Jesus Christ, who came to this world to make it possible for us to be forgiven of our trespasses, to make it possible for us to learn from our mistakes, to develop ourselves and to grow. That takes me to the next point of because now that when we make said mistakes, we can now learn from said mistakes. We don't have to be afraid of said mistakes. I'm not saying that we should go out and purposely choose to do something wrong that we know is wrong already. I'm saying we need to not be afraid of going out and making a mistake. It's a hard way after making a foolish decision. The difference between the right and wrong decisions in life. Because we have that ability to be forgiven of those trespasses. We have the ability to be forgiven of those sins, to learn from our mistakes and to grow and to become better. I believe that as we grow and we gain knowledge and experience, then the challenge, then the opportunities to gain more experience continue. You know, I remember when I was younger, I was worried about a $300 car payment for insurance. I wasn't sure how I was going to cover insurance before it lapsed, and I was super worried about that. Now that's not a problem at all. I wouldn't even think twice about that. Now I have bigger problems to contend with. Now I have a young child that doesn't want to go to bed, who is loud and destructive. Love her to death. She's my sweetheart. She's my buddy, and but I need to learn how to. The trial that I need to learn now is how to be a father that isn't harsh, but however still directs the child to do what they need to do. Help her understand that when she needs to go to bed, and help her understand that she needs the rest. Eventually, this won't be an issue anymore because eventually she will learn. She'll grow, gain that knowledge for herself, and there'll be another trial down the road. And that's how life is. As you gain the knowledge to handle one scenario, another more difficult scenario comes along, and that's just because that's how we grow. And that goes into my next point of I believe that God wants us to do everything in our power for ourselves. It's not to say that He doesn't stand by and have a solution for us, that He's not going to help us along the way. Much like I said in my previous example, I don't need you know I don't need my father's permission to go to the store. I don't need my father's permission to go out. I don't need his permission anymore because I have surpassed the need for that. And as we develop in our skills and our abilities, we surpass the need for help in certain scenarios. Not saying that God doesn't want to help, or not saying that God wouldn't help. We no longer need the help in those scenarios because we've developed past it.
That makes sense. Speaking of developing, part of developing is often, just change. Have your spiritual beliefs changed like at all? And if so, can you share an example?
I wouldn't say so much changed. I would say solidified more. I'd also say I worked on becoming more forgiving. There was a
Say that word
scenario,
again.
more forgiving. There was a time on my mission where I was just at my wit's end with one of my companions. I couldn't stand being with him. He would belittle me on every chance he got. He would tell me that I had no faith, that I didn't know that I didn't know what the scriptures, that I didn't have a testimony, constantly. And I was just done working with him. I was ready to call the leader of our mission, and in our church we call them mission presidents. I was ready to call the mission president and be like, and tell him that I could not work with his elder anymore. I could not be his companion. I was done. There's no way I was going to work with him anymore. And getting ready to call the mission president and tell him that I was not working with this elder any longer, I heard the words, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And I realized that sometimes I jump too quickly to a decision, or I jump too quickly to a judgment, and I don't step back and look at people as often as I should. How Heavenly Father would see them. Like you said earlier in this podcast, with me, it's always black and white, and I would say that it's still always black and white. Like wrong is wrong and right is right. That's how I am. But sometimes I allow that to cloud my judgment, to cloud my view of people. And I sometimes, not all the time, I sometimes need to step back and remember that all these people, even though they're making decisions that I disagree with, they're making decisions that I believe will lead them to despair. They are still a child of God. Heavenly Father still loves them very much. They are still cherished and they still have value. Whatever, it doesn't matter the decision they make. They still have value. Their value does not change because of the decisions they make. There's a story where a professor held out $100 bill and asked his class, who wanted the $100 bill, and expectingly everyone in the class wanted the $100 bill. The professor then proceeded to crumple up the $100 bill, step on the $100 bill, do everything he can to tarnish the $100 bill. And then asked again, who still wants the $100 bill? And expectingly everyone still wanted it because it's still a $100 bill. And I sometimes find myself forgetting that just because that $100 bill is tarnished, it's still a $100 bill.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that takes a lot of introspection to see, to realize when, we don't always give people the benefit of the doubt, or we don't always allow them to make their own decisions because they make decisions that we don't necessarily like or we feel are harmful to them. And that kind of leads us into the next question. How have your spiritual beliefs in the past shaped you, and then how are they continuing to shape you today?
Well, in the past, they've kind of pushed me on to strive to develop myself, strive to do, to be kind. It pushed me to do things that I felt like I've needed, like that was important. For example, going on a mission. They kind of led me to not being afraid to stand up for what I believe. And that's nice. And they still push me to do those things now, except I feel like instead of in the past, I had more of youthful arrogance in a lot of things. Now it's been more tempered. I still stand up for what I believe, but I'm not so brash about it any longer. I'm, I strive to be more compassionate. I strive to be more understanding, and I and now, it still pushes me to be the best father, to be the best husband that I can be, just like it did in the past, where I strive to be the best son I could be, the best brother I could be. However, that is tempered. I understand that I can't accomplish everything. I have to pick and choose what I can and can't accomplish. I understand that I have to regulate myself, because I I want to do everything. I want to learn how to woodwork, and I want to learn how to metalwork, and I want to learn how to work on vehicles, and I want to uh, raise chickens, and I want to grow a farm, and I want to be a father. I want to learn Chinese, and I want to do all these different things. But it is, it's because of my belief and understanding that I am not able to accomplish everything, at least not right now. That I need to pick the things that are important. That I need to focus on the things that will benefit me now, that will put me in a better position to do these things later, to do other things in the future.
Mm, that makes sense. So moving on, the other thing that we wanted to talk about, or the next section we want to talk about, is a little bit about your values, like non-religious values specifically. Like, so I understand that you believe in Jesus Christ and that you're LDS and those specific values. But just what would you say your core values are?
So, like any actual religious person, I'm going to cycle back to being religious a lot, because those religious aspects feed into a lot of my core values. Honesty. We're taught to
And
be
that's
honest,
yeah,
and like
and
that's
that's what I mean by values. I'm just saying, like, values as like something that anyone would say, that's just a core value, like honesty or integrity, some versus just Jesus Christ. Because I realize that your faith in Christ is is where your values may come from. But my question is just more specifically, what are the core values that you hold that are just important to you?
I would say family. That might I understand it's tricky as a value. Values are normally more like attributes, like honesty. But I'd have to say family is
Family
one of
is
those
value. I understand. Like, yeah,
one of
is
those
one I would
pillars.
consider.
Like, it's one of those guiding factors in my life. If I didn't have my wife, and if I didn't have my kids, I would have I would struggle to find the desire to do a lot of things that I'm striving to do. And that's not to say that my faith in Christ isn't strong enough to. But at the same time, it's because of them as well that drive me to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was knowing that I was destined to become a father one day. I was destined to become a husband one day. That assisted in driving me to develop myself as a young man before we I met my wife, before I had my children, because I believe that you prepare yourself before things happen. Okay, you don't prepare for the fire after the fire has already started. You get those things ready before that happens. You
Mm-hmm.
don't you don't go and try and find, you know you don't go plant your crops after the harvest has happened, because then it doesn't do anything for you. You develop beforehand. So family would be one of those solid core values for me, along with the traditional integrity, honesty, humility. uh, Compassion is one thing I've been working on, and and something honestly, and I understand it's probably going to get a lot of hate for this, but masculinity. People like to attack masculinity, and masculinity is a core value in a young man's life. And and real masculinity is all those things that young men normally have. Aggression and aggression and all that drive and everything. But instead of just being out of control, it's channeled, it's directed, it's reined in, for lack of a better term. And that's what makes masculinity useful in a society. And so I honestly believe that masculinity is another core value of mine. I'm striving to be, in every sense of the word, the manliest man I can be for my family. And that's not saying that I ignore my wife, or when I demand my wife to make me a sandwich when I walk in the door. But that's not masculinity. Masculinity is standing up for your family in all aspects. Protecting them from any sort of threat. Masculinity is being the leader that your children need. Holding them accountable to the choices that they make, not being mean and vicious to them, but holding them accountable to the choices that they make, and helping them understand the choices have consequences, whether that's good or bad. All choices have consequences. That's masculinity. Teaching your children masculinity is being that anchor for your wife. Masculinity is being that person that your family can count on, that when things get tough, and they've gotten tough for us in the past, knowing that no matter what, you're going to dig deep, and you're going to do what you need to do to provide for your family, because that is what you're supposed to do as a father and as a man. Understanding that you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, and you were designed to bear it. That's masculinity.
No, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that's interesting. And you may get hate. If anyone is watching this, the whole point is to better understand and to have empathy. So don't hate Daniel. I don't think anything you said. I don't think anything you said is necessarily hate worthy. So
I'm not going to sugarcoat things. I'm going to say what I believe. I'm going to stand by it.
Please do. That's the thing is, I think, getting away from the interview for just a second, I think honest discourse is very important in order to, we need to be able to talk about ideas. We need to be able to discuss them. And if we're not willing, if we always try to censor people who have different ideas than us, then we are killing that discourse.
Well, that's how you get
that's
the
not
division.
going to let. Yeah,
that's how division happens. Is when you refuse to talk to other people, even if you disagree on a lot of things, but you're willing to at least come together and agree on the basic premise that you guys are both humans and both have value, and although you might disagree, at least the basic premise is there that your opinions are still valid and still deserve to be heard. And then we can work together and come up with a solution that benefits everybody.
Yeah, one of the episodes that we'll probably have in the future is going to be about masculinity. So I look forward to that. I think it'll be really interesting, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say about that. And also on the topic of masculinity, let's talk about political opinions. Do you have any strong political opinions?
I am very, very anti-abortion. Like I'm not unreasonable. I will hear your argument about rape and incest and the life of the mom, sure. But the other 99%, it is a hill I will die on every day, all day. Doesn't matter. Like I said, I'll listen to your argument about the other 1% of the time. The other 99, not moving from that.
is likely going to be another thing we'll probably have a discussion on in a future episode. But before we get to like specific issues, what are your thoughts on the current state of politics as a whole? And what concerns you the most about it?
What concerns me a lot is the delusion of so many people, and it's not just on one side or the other. It's the grand illusion of so many people on either side of that's causing this huge division of, you know, there's this one side thinks that there's this evil cabal that's trying to destroy America, and this other side thinks that thinks the same thing, but it's the other group that's being evil and trying to destroy America. In reality, it's the two groups that are doing the damage. And that's not for everyone, you know, that takes one side or the other. I'm strong conservative, but I understand that there are still good people on the other side that have the best intentions for this country. I disagree with some of the policies that they're pushing, like the transgender policy that they're pushing right now. But I understand that, you know, I understand people like that side with that issue. And it's just like we said, like it's the unwilling to talk to each other. It's the unwillingness to listen and to have this discussion. It's the unwillingness to see each other as people. That's causing such a great appeal in our community.
Yeah, I can see that. Honestly, that's a concern that I have as well. And then, so now we'll get to the specific political issues. You've mentioned abortion is your number one issue. What are the other like very important issues to you, and what are your positions on those?
I'd have to say I'm also anti-transgender. And that's not to say like if an adult wants to go and do whatever, knock yourself out. You're an adult. I disagree with it, but you're an adult. I kind of see the same thing with homosexuality. It's if you're an adult, you're an adult, and you go do whatever you want to do as an adult, as long as it's not hurting, you know, as long as it's not hurting other people. What really gets me is when they try to bring children in on this, and they're like, you know, we have to do this for no, they're a child. What a child needs is therapy. What the child needs is to understand that people feel out of place sometimes. People feel confused sometimes. It happens. Everyone goes through it. Literally, everyone will go through a time in their life where they don't feel like they belong, wherever it is that they are. And instead of saying, well, yeah, you got to go through surgery and you know get and lose part of who you are, literally part of who you are, because you're dealing with this mental and emotional turmoil right now, is not right. The child needs help, yes, but not the help where you remove parts of who they are. And that's not to say, you know, the child grows up and the child becomes an adult and goes, you know what, I still think I want to do this. Well, you're an adult now. I'm the same way. Basically, a lot of things, it's leave children alone. They are children. They are innocent. They deserve our protection. They deserve, like I saw this thing, a gay couple from New York. They were suing New York because they said they had the right to be a parent. I personally, like, it's not my place to decide if a gay couple should be parents or not. But their argument was that they had the right to be a parent, and the fact of the matter is, no one has the right to be a parent. I don't have the right to be a parent. Well, I should think of it. I have the right to be a parent. I have my own kids. But it's not my right to be a parent. It's their right to have parents. It is a child's right to have a mom and a dad. That's who has the right here. We don't have the right to be parents. They have the right to parents. And that's how that's supposed to work. And they have the right to be protected and to be shielded from, you know, from the evils of the world. I get annoyed when people bring children into adult discussions. When years ago, well, I guess not years ago, but a year ago or so, when the car blew and the water in my apartment froze and blew the pipes, my children did not know that because it didn't concern them. Obviously, directly it did, but it was my job as their father to give them a life where they didn't know anything was going on. Now, granted, she was 1.5, 2 years old at the time. Super easy to tell a 2-year-old that everything's fine. But all the same, it wasn't their problem to worry about. It was my problem to worry about because they are children, and it is my responsibility to handle it for them. They don't need to worry about where their food is going to come for the day. That's my responsibility. They don't need to worry about a roof over their head. That's my responsibility as their father. They shouldn't have to worry about clothes on their back or a place to sleep. That's my responsibility. That is their right to have, and my responsibility to provide. And that's how I see children. So any topic any issue that correlates with children, I defend the child. And that is a hill I will die on, to defend those child, and to defend child from things like that. I'm also pro-gun. Don't know if you can see, but it says pro-gun, anti-idiot.
I see the pro-gun. I didn't see the anti-idiot. Oh, there we go. Yeah, sadly, those aren't necessarily the same thing.
I know. Like, I understand that there are idiots that have guns. Still pro-gun. I'm not saying that they should lose their guns because they're idiots, because there's no way to actually go about proving that yet. But I believe that people have the right to defend themselves. I have several weapons that I use to defend my family. Obviously, I've never been in a situation. Thank goodness that I haven't been in a situation that I needed to use a deadly weapon to defend my family. But I have them so I can. I believe people have the right to do that. I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that you should have the training. I don't think you should just go crazy with just go and get a gun and just do whatever. I'm a strong supporter of having the training. I have fired my weapons many times. I know how to handle my weapons. I know how to safely handle my weapons. I know how to store my weapons so that my family is safe. But I've also know how to teach my kids how to keep themselves safe with my weapons. I've actively taught my daughter to not touch my weapons. She understands where they are. No, I don't leave my weapons in a place where she can get them. That'd be stupid. However, I understand that the reason I have said weapon is so I can defend my family in a moment's notice. If it's disassembled, unloaded, and locked up somewhere, when seconds count, that weapon won't be available to me. It's out of reach from her. She doesn't have the ability to reach it. The safety is always on, and I keep that weapon nearby me and secure. But on the off chance that, for whatever reason, that weapon is where she can get to it, she knows what it is. She knows that she's not supposed to touch it because I have taught her what it is, what she can't do with it. She knows what it is. Once again, I want to reiterate, it is never where she can get it though.
Yeah, gun safety.
Because it's a weapon. I'm also like with this when the whole Alec Baldwin thing. This might be a little bit of me not being able to have any compassion, like, 'cause I'm working on it. But when Alec Baldwin shot and killed someone, and he claimed it was an accident, I was like, I don't care if it was an accident. You had a weapon. Number one rule of a weapon is always treat it like it's loaded. The number 2 rule of the weapon is to never cover something you're not willing to destroy. Number 3 is to not pull the trigger unless you're ready to fire it. You broke all 3 of those those rules.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, you should be in prison for at least 5 years, bare minimum. Because while I believe it is a right to defend yourself, to defend yourself and defend your family, that you have a right to have a weapon to do so. I do believe, once again, back to the consequence things, and you make a bad decision, there are consequences that must follow. Which is why I'm big on gun safety and I'm big on training. I'm not saying that you can't get a weapon if you don't have the training. I believe you should get the training though. Get the training. It is the argument that I always hear is guns were only meant to kill things. I'm like, yes, that is accurate. That is what they are.
So would you, just to clarify your position a little bit, are you like in favor of like mandated like training for people who own firearms?
I wouldn't say that, because then it becomes a loophole to make it illegal. All you'd have to do is make the training incredibly expensive, and then boom, no one can have guns. So that's why I would be against it. I'm super high proponent for doing the training. I've gotten training with it. I know how to handle my weapons. Huge proponent for training, for doing the training. But I wouldn't say I'm for mandating the training, because like I said, all you do is say, well, you have to charge $500 for a training course. So now not only are you buying a $500 weapon, you also have to come with $500 for training. That's $1,000, and that's just for the weapon and the training class. That's not including the ammunition for it. That's not including the time off that you have to take from work. So you're looking,
Okay, makes sense.
you're getting up there, and now you basically have made it illegal without making it illegal.
All right. Are there any other core values you'd like to share? Political values, religious values, anything we haven't talked about so far?
I think people are getting a pretty good picture of me.
All right. Well, then that moves on to the next one. Do you think that is there something that people might be surprised to learn about you?
I don't know. I feel like I've always just kind of been an open book. I try not to hide who I am, because the way I've always seen it growing up is you can either accept me for who I am or not, and that's not my problem, it's yours.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been a big proponent of, when people have issue with me, it's not me having an issue with them, it's them having the issue with me. And it's their issue to resolve. I feel like so yeah, I'd have to say that I can't think of anything off the top of my head, because I try to be very, very blunt, very direct. I guess I would say people might be surprised that I don't mean to be offensive. It's never my intent to offend, but if it happens, it happens.
Yeah, there's not much we can do about it sometimes, and offense is always a risk when you have open and honest discussions.
Like Jordan Peterson
Yeah, I'm
says,
sure that.
if you are able to think for yourself, you have to risk being risk being offensive, because someone's going to disagree with you.
Yeah, and during this podcast, it is almost guaranteed that some of us are going to offend others, but we're brothers. We can do it. We can take it.
I hope so.
All right. What is something you wish more people would understand about you or your perspective?
But I am actually very open-minded. I'm willing to listen to the argument, and I'm willing to listen to people's sides. But at the same time, my opinions, which something annoys me, is when people are like, "Well, you're just arguing your opinion." Well, yeah, duh. It's my opinion. That's why I'm arguing it. But
For a second, I thought you were going to be like, I'm open-minded, but my opinion's the right one.
well, like Forrest and like I'm open-minded. However, my opinions have been formed with me through years of observation and learning for myself. And so I am open-minded. I'm willing to sit down and have these discussions.
But yeah, you have your own perspective.
But
Makes
I
sense.
am pretty solid in my opinion. That's not to say I can't change. Everyone can change. But I'm pretty solid in my opinion.
Can you think of a time you've had an opinion that's changed?
The Electoral College. I used to think like lots of people that the Electoral College was kind of an outdated thing and we didn't really need it anymore. That has changed. The Electoral College is necessary because then states like Wyoming, Nebraska, Michigan, basically all the little states that have like maybe 5 people in them, their voices would never be heard because of the big states like California, Texas, New York. And because of the Electoral College, those states have a voice. Granted, it's not a very big voice because there's only 5 people in those states.
Yeah, literally.
Like, but they still have a voice. Like, so yeah, that's one thing that I used to think like most people, that Electoral College is, I guess I shouldn't say most people, but like a few people, the Electoral College is outdated. I disagree.
All right. So do you have any personal goals or anything that you're working to accomplish?
I'm trying to obviously learn how to do different things, better myself, become more sufficient. Growing plants, something that I've struggled with is growing plants. I used to think I had a green thumb. Turns out I have like I don't know what the opposite of a green thumb is.
Black thumb?
A blue toe or something like that.
Well, you can always come over to our garden. David just harvested
But-
probably like this many carrots today.
So that's what I'm working on. But I also am working on, as I've been spending a lot of time working on developing systems that allow me to do more without doing more. Like I'm building a watering system for my chickens that run off a float valve, and so that I don't have to water them anymore, other than make sure the float valve is still working every now and again. But that way, it frees me up instead of having to water them every day. If the system just takes care of that itself, then I can walk away and let it take care of that itself. I have a plan that I've drawn up for an automated fermentation process for my chicken feed.
Mm-hmm.
It's still on paper, and I still need to figure out how to put it together. But if I can get that put together, then I can automate another system.
Oh, very cool. All right. Well, in closing, is there one idea, principle, value, something you'd like to share or emphasize?
I kind of feel strongly to go back to the masculinity thing. We are brothers, and as brothers, we are here for a reason. And over the years, watching the attack on men and the attack on masculinity is kind of hit home. A big part of masculinity is the ability to listen and to understand. You look at great leaders of the past, they've always been great at understanding what was going on around them. That's what made them great, it's what made them be able to do the things that they were able to do. It was because they understand. And anyone that's going to listen to the podcast, anyone that's going to join in the podcast, I feel like driving home, we need to be willing to listen and to understand each other's perspectives, even though we might disagree with them. I know that, for example, even you and I, we have our differencing in opinions, but the willingness to listen and the willingness to strive to understand is going to be important.
Yeah, I think I agree. Thanks for joining in today, Dan. It's been a pleasure to interview you. Yeah, and just as a reminder, yeah, the whole point of this podcast is so we can better understand each other. And the way to understand each other and the way to have empathy then grow closer to be brothers is by being willing to keep an open dialogue even when we disagree. And so I hope that this podcast and especially the discussions will help not only us grow together as brothers, and us sisters will probably come on at some point in time too. But also I hope it encourages others to, reach out and, be brothers with the people, with our neighbors. Like, we don't necessarily need to be blood brothers in order to be brothers and sisters with those around us. One of the biggest issues in today's world, and I'm sure you would agree, is just tribalism. This idea that we only look out for ourselves or our tribe, So that's what we're combating here. Anyways, yeah, this was the second episode of the podcast. I'm not sure who we will be bringing on next week, but we should have another episode next week. Do what?
Probably do Ephraim. He is the oldest.
He is the oldest. I figured that rather than going in order, I would just kind of take it randomly. Mix it in.
You're gonna put everyone's name in a hat and pull out a name. Nice.
Well, we'll see whoever is available, really.
All the same, I look forward to having these discussions. Like, obviously, we're brothers. We talk all the time, anyways. But I do look forward to having these discussions on a more public forum.
Indeed, and on top of that, stuff like this will be good for kids. Your kids, in 10 years will want to see what their dad was like when they were just a little kid.
He's been this way his whole life.
The thing is, we all change.
Yeah, I'm just getting older.
I mean, that's a change.
All right, Doug.
All right,
I want to
end
really quick. Hold on. I don't know if anyone's come out and said this, but this whole podcast thing was actually Douglas's idea. So I do want to take a minute to thank Douglas for coming up with this podcast idea and kind of spearheading his idea on getting everyone to come in on this.
Well, thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. All right, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Peace out.